Randy, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you here.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I'd like to get a little bit of knowledge into why you're on this journey. It sounds like you've been in the construction industry for quite some time now. You're still involved in not only on helping other contractors, let's say, but you're also still in with about 6 different companies from what I understand. So I'd love to know kind of why construction, because a lot of people, like, it's not an easy business in general, isn't easy, but construction's not an easy industry to be in either.
Great question. When we talk about it being easy, and when you just said that, the first thing that pops into mind is I think we often make it more complicated than it needs to be. And the truth is, what I think a lot of builders don't see it as, they don't see it as a logistics business. And at the end of the day, what it is to me, this is a logistics business. And if we treat it as such, we can step back and see the simplicity of systems, people, and having the system work for us instead of us trying to work within the business and in the system itself. And so we make it more complicated. And I think it's a matter of how we choose and use our time, which is why I started this journey in the first place, is really about sharing what I've done, how I've done what I've done to remove myself, from my core business back in 2007 to 2017, when I went on to start several other businesses. I removed myself from that core business, and how I did it was being able to build the right people, putting the right people in the right seats, building the systems around it, having the metrics and the scoreboards to monitor and measure that business, and so that I could run and manage it from afar while I did other things to continue to build more value. And when I sold that business in 2017, there was a realization that what I pulled off was actually unique and different. Not many can get to that point. So I was hit with this realization, and the fact was I need to share this with other guys to be able to do what we pulled off. Now, I love helping guys take their business to the next level, find freedom within it. And I don't mean freedom to go lie on a beach, because most of us don't want to go lie on a beach. Hey, doing that for a week or two at a time is great, but can't do it forever, right? So it's really helping them get removed so that they can work on the business and not in it, for they can then as well start living more of their passion and doing other things. Because I think most of us want to do something more than we're currently doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back a little bit before I dig into some of the other stuff you mentioned. You mentioned logistics business. So that's the first I've heard of that. So can you explain that a little bit more? Because from a lot of conversations that I've had, and even the way I think about it, we're in the service industry, right? We are serving our clients, right? We're bringing a service that they can't do themselves, or they don't want to do themselves. So how are you flipping that around, and why does thinking it as a logistics business help you?
Well, if we just remove the fact is, yes, we're building homes, we're remodeling homes, we're doing additions, whatever our business is, that to me is the what, right? That's what we do. But how we do that is what people pay for. And the how is the client experience. The client experience is where it's a logistics type business, because we're really moving parts and pieces, we're managing projects, and we're accomplishing an outcome via a number of sub-trades or, self-performed work in a lot of cases, if guys are, have their own teams, which makes it far more complicated. So this is the complication layer that we add when we want to self-perform. And so it really just depends on what our business model is and how we see that business model and where we want to go. Because to me, it all starts with the journey. Like, where do I want to be in 3 to 5 years from now? And let's build from that. And that's where I think when we all look at that destination, I'd like to take the easiest path to get there, the most lucrative, systematized way that's scalable and removes me in the process, so I can do more with leveraging my time and who I am in my business.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's a really good way to think about the business. Your business that you sold, what kind of business was that? What kind of work
was
were you
transportation
doing?
Logistics.
Okay.
So in 2017, and from the logistics standpoint, it's about moving parts and pieces around the board, right?
Right.
Which is exactly what we're doing in the construction world. We're moving parts and pieces. We're managing projects. We're helping our client get an outcome and moving them through a client experience. And most of the time, we're far too tied up in the what of our business to focus on the how, and the how again is what people pay for. So it's the how. What I help guys really do is focus on the how. And when we can focus on the how, we can charge more money. We can then get our pricing right, because at the end of the day, if we don't have our numbers right, we don't have our pricing right, we're not profitable, we can't put the right people in the right seats. And therefore, we can't build the system around them that actually gets us what we need.
Yeah, that's really great. And in my mind, I'm thinking about everything, the why and the what you already mentioned, and the how. So all of that really comes into play. So I feel like the why, we've all heard, I'm assuming most of us have heard of the Simon Sinek
Oh,
book,
sure. Start with why.
So why I think is really interesting but I think the why is more important for the owner, the business owner, right? To get through all the tough parts, because there's going to be obstacles that you come across, and the why is going to keep you going. Like you said, the what is really what you do, the type of work that you do, but the how is if you don't get the how right, then you're going to constantly be fighting an uphill battle, by the sounds of it, the way you're describing.
100%. And the what is, let's not take away from the fact that what is critically important, but tell me if the what is not table stakes these days. If you don't have a good product, if you're not building a quality product, you're dead in the water already. So the what is a must. It's table stakes just to be in business, just to survive, right? But the how is what takes us to the next level. But here's the problem is we don't have the time to focus on it, because we're so caught up in the day-to-day of our business that the how isn't even something that crosses our mind most times. And when it does cross our mind, most of the time we don't know what to do next to create the how, which is where we come in.
So now, how are you working with companies? Maybe you can share some examples, because you're involved in a few different companies now. So maybe you can take one of those companies. I don't know if you started the company or if you were brought into the company, but maybe you can share an example of how you're bringing this logistics way of thinking into a construction business.
Yeah. So, you mentioned about whether I've, started them or I was brought in at a certain point, and that's, I've done both. And the truth of the matter is let's take when I'm brought into a business that's been going on for 5, 10, 15 years, whatever the time frame is. And what we ultimately do, we have to do a diagnostic. We do a 10-point diagnostic of the business first. Ultimately, I need to get in and see what's happening. I want to find the low-hanging fruit. I want to find where the holes are. Typically, there's a lot of gaps, and typically we're pissing money like big time in our business. Normally, we'll find, but if you're a business doing $1 million to $5 million, we'll find at least $100K that's that's falling through the cracks in the holes. And so, if we don't capture that money that's falling through the cracks, we will never build our teams. We can't afford to build our teams. We can't afford to spend the time to build our teams. And so we got to find the holes first, and then start buttoning those things up. And there is a process here. This isn't, a snap my finger and, a quick fix, right? We've got to take, we call it bites of the elephant. You can't eat the elephant one bite, or, in one bite. You got to chew it down a bite at a time. So let's take the process and we start that. So I'm also, there's another big thing. Some guys will say, let's create, these elaborate business plans. And I have no desire to create a business plan more than 90 days out. And so I like to get extremely laser focused on what's going to move the needle in the next 90 days. And let's fix that. And 90 days later, if we've done it right, we will have enough momentum that we need to take the next 90 days and relook at where we're going, because a lot has changed. You can transform in 90 days. And so when you transform in 90 days, nothing looks like it did 90 days ago. Therefore, why have a fucking business plan that's a year or 2, 3 years down the road? So let's get really focused on what we're doing today, and let's know what we're like. literally week to week, how we're moving the needle. And let's start taking that, what we refer to as vital actions. And until we can start doing that, nothing changes.
Yeah, I like the way of looking at that. The business plan. I've made a few business plans that you put together just because you need to get financing for something, but then you never even look at them again, right? And
Yeah.
obviously nobody ever asks you about it because they just want to.
Sure.
It's just part of their process to loan you the money.
Yeah,
Sort of
and
thing, right? Which is
financing
just
is a great point. Financing may be the only reason to, create a business plan that somebody may need if you're looking for that financing.
yeah, absolutely. Now I'm curious. You said you can easily find holes in a business. Where do you typically find those holes in a business when you start digging into it?
Well, number one is pricing. The biggest problem I think for most out there is just understanding how to price and get the numbers right. But it all stems from our financials. And the problem is, as I'm sure you have seen yourself, that they say 96 to 98%, and I know this to be true because we see it every day. 96 to 98% of business owners out there, especially in this industry, are not looking at or see or understand, if they are looking at their financials on any given, monthly basis or more, ideally. And so I just start with the numbers. Let's look at the numbers. Where are you at? Most of the time, it's either not available or it's misallocated. So we've got to get the numbers right. Then let's start working on the pricing. The pricing has to make sense due to our overheads, our break evens. And once we get that figured out, okay, now we can start pricing to make some money. There's a ton of cash that's just sitting there by not understanding our financials, not really dialing in the pricing based on our financials and how we currently operate our business.
Yeah,
That's
so
a big
true.
one. And that's just one of the 10.
Yeah, and what often happens when you're competing, if you're trying to win jobs on price, you're competing against other companies who also don't have the pricing right. So everything
Bingo.
is kind of pushed down lower and lower, and then
Yeah.
you're just a race to the bottom, right? So
Right. But therein lies the next big hole, is how you're showing up. Because if we're showing up like they are, then all you got is to compete again on price. Right. But if we're showing up different than they are and we're standing out, then your client, and if you've got the right client, sometimes we have the wrong client, and that's a marketing issue, another hole, right? So it depends on the whole mix, has to come together and be right. But here's the thing, we talk about this all the time. You must have profit before growth, right? So I don't care about what you're doing, how you're doing it. We're not talking about growth, trying to put marketing strategies in or close more deals until you get the numbers right first, right? So let's have profit before growth, and then let's have systems before people. Because the next thing is we try to grow and we throw a bunch of people at our problem, but it creates more frustration, chaos, and overwhelm. And so therefore, we've caused ourselves greater grief, and it was systems was the problem in the first place. So systems is another big hole. Marketing, sales, systems, money, financials, these are all holes. And at the end of the day, the last piece is the how before the what. That yes, the what's important, but the how is what's going to close deals at higher price points. That's what people are going to pay for. And at the end of the day, now you have to show up and prove that you've got the how dialed in your sales process. But we have to think about everything as a process, as a system. And if we don't, then we're just showing up every day doing what we're trying to do. And we're driving, running on a hamster wheel, not getting anywhere.
Yeah, you're just filling the bucket with the holes, and the holes are just getting bigger and
Right.
bigger.
And we're bailing constantly. So we talk about, that's exactly right. We talk about when, if the destination or the goal is to get across the ocean, and that's our ultimate vision, but we're in a leaky boat and we're bailing the whole time, that's why none of us get there. Right. So we've got to fix the boat first, and then let's get across the ocean. So ultimately, these 6 businesses that I'm a part of now and have stake in, we're fixing holes, we're building out systems, we're getting the money right, and then we're adding people as we are starting to grow and add marketing. We typically don't add marketing for about 6 months, because it takes about 6 months to get the machine right first, and then we'll start cranking the thing.
Right. Which, if you think about it, though, is still very quick, right? Especially if somebody's been on this hamster wheel for
15
10,
years.
15 years,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then all of a sudden you can turn it around. And to some extent that I could, see a lot of people thinking, oh, that was a waste of time the last 10, 15 years, but not necessarily, because you still built something that you could then, once you fix it, you can catapult yourself, I find, probably a lot easier, because you've
Oh,
already
big
built
time.
the clientele. You're probably, if you're staying busy and you have these holes that you're just trying to fill up, then it's just a matter about making it better, because you already got the work coming in. So it's not even
Bingo.
necessarily a marketing thing, unless you're getting the wrong clients, like you said, right?
And likely over that time frame, you've really dialed in the what. Your product is great. People love your work. And that's like, we never see that being the issue typically. I mean, if that's the issue, I'm not going to help you much anyway. Right. With that's got to be there.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so typically the what is great. Now let's build around that what and create something special. Create something unique that the market rarely sees.
Right. Now, one of my questions was, what are some of the biggest challenges that the companies you're working with are facing? But it sounds like it's probably what we were just talking about.
Yeah, big
Right.
time.
It could be the money, it could be the people, but if they don't have these, if they're not putting their underwear on before their pants, if they're putting things in the wrong order, then you're going to end up with a very different product.
And therein lies the other problem of trying to do this. Typically on our own, when we're trying to do it, we don't know what bites of the elephant to take in what order, right? Because sometimes we're going to get them in the wrong order, which is trying to, it's the systems before people. If we throw the people at it before our systems, or at least the systems simultaneously with the people, then we can have a little bit of, we reduce the chaos and overwhelm in the process. But really, when we talk about these challenges, we refer to them as the big four, and the big four is always money first. It's systems, it's teams, and it's time. Right. So there's our big four: money, systems, teams, and time. And time has everything to do with the fact of why we are so on the hamster wheel, not understanding how to ever get off of it. And that's this running in one place forever. And we're just sucked up in the time. I have no time to do this. Where if you look outside that box and you create what I realized when I mentioned earlier is, I removed myself 10 years from a business that was paying me extremely lucratively, and I'm able to then go on and build other businesses in the process. I mean, that's all about time. How does some guys have 6+ businesses going on and others are just inundated in the one they're in? But it's just a matter, we all have the same 24 hours. So how are we using that time? So it's a matter of getting that figured out.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that to me sounds like that's where you're building and scaling and growing the business. And we were talking kind of before we officially started recording about the fact that a lot of businesses just kind of go to a certain point and then they shut down. The owners kind of miss out on the opportunity to sell that business that they built up over the last 30 years, potentially. Right. Yeah. And unless they have somebody to take it over, it's just kind of gone. So it was their investment to some extent, the biggest investment they probably made, right, in terms of time in their entire life, is now out the window, and they could have capitalized it. So what are some things? I have a few questions. We'll start with, what should we be focusing on to get our business to where we can sell it, if that is our goal, which I think is always going to be the goal, unless you're going to pass it off to one of your children and your children want it.
And even if you're passing off to your children, well, pass off something that's fucking worth something now.
And you still need to have a value to it, right? So then my
follow-up
question was going to be, how do you value it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what do you focus on? So if we're a business, I'm a construction company, I plan on being in business, I don't know, I'm just making this up, another 10 years, and then I'm hoping to get rid of it, at this point, or what should I be focusing on at this point, and how do I know what the value of my construction business is?
Great. Yeah. Amazing questions. I love it. And it really leads us to, and I'll start with this, is why we called ourselves 4-Level Coach is really about my belief of the 4 levels in business. And level 1 is having a job in your business. where, you're inundated, you're on that hamster wheel, and there's no real value because you are the value, right? Now, level 2 is when we create a real small business where we start getting some management levels in place. People are starting to take some things off your plate, and you're starting to look like a real small business, right? That's level 2. Level 3 is scalable. Scalable is when things are dialed in, the people are doing the right things. The systems are in place, and you can take this business model you've created in whatever geographic area you're in, and you could literally take this model and take it down the street, take it to another location, and do what you're doing. That's a very scalable type model. I mean, it's a franchise, right? It's a
Right.
franchisable thinking. Whether you ever want to franchise or not, that doesn't matter. The point is, we got to think about it like that franchisable model, a McDonald's type system, right? That's the logistics. When we think about it as logistics, it's a system that has to be in place for the model to work, which includes marketing and sales and everything else. But the ultimate is level 4, to me, is sellable. And so that leads us to your point of, well, what is sellable? Well, sellable to me, and arguably you could sell a business at level 2. It just won't be worth much,
Mm.
right? That's probably not what you wanted to sell it for. That's not what you built it for. So a true sellable business is something that's scalable, that has real value because you are no longer in the day-to-day operation. And so sellable is you remove from the day-to-day. Now, how does that happen? When the systems all work and you put the right people in place. So we start with one of the very first things we do with all our clients, not just, the ones that I have stake in and I'm part of, but all our clients have to go through our time finder system. And the time finder system is to show you where and what it's costing you to be so sucked up into your world and into your business, right? So we've got to remove you from urgent, because it's the urgent things that are happening day to day in your business that keep sucking you back in and pulling you, right? So this is all the time constraints is on the urgent. And so ultimately we got to remove you from urgent, and we've got to look at, hey, if I was removed from these list of activities that I take care of every day, then who could take this off my plate? What roles would they be filling? Because you're filling operational roles, administrative roles, sales roles, marketing roles. You're filling a ton of roles. So we have a system that you go through to figure out, what does all that look like? What does the structure of the business look like once I'm removed? And who would need to be around me to make that happen? Now we have a game plan. Now we have a game plan that's 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years out. That is cool to have, but let's create laser focus, plans in the now for what's the next 90 days look like if any of that were to actually be true. And so that's sort of the system, as in a nutshell, as quickly as I can share it, to get to
Yeah.
that level.
So yeah, so you got to build your business to a point where you don't have to be in it. And then you have essentially that's the product that you can package up and sell, or like you said, franchise.
Yeah. Nobody wants to buy a business that you are the value in the business. And as soon as you sell it and leave, eventually, you might have to stay for a year or 2 in the business when you sell it. But once you're gone, shit, whoever's purchased it is left with what? Like, what's left, right? So
Yeah.
it has to be a system that's turnkey. And this is what I realized when I sold in 2017, how turnkey ours was. And I was not required in any way, shape, or form to stick around for one day, because it would already operated for 10 years without me. That was ultimate value for the buyer that just went, holy shit, we've never seen this before, right? So that's what we're helping people do, because that's the ultimate goal to me.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It sounds like a fantastic goal to work towards as any business owners, because like I was already saying, is like, that's the investment. If you're putting all this time into it, this is to some extent your retirement plan, right? Or a big part of your retirement plan.
Yeah.
If you're going to put this much time and effort into it. Now, how can somebody, if they're working towards this and they want to know if they only have another 10 years, for example, how do they know what their value could be or their business, sorry. How do they know that what their business could be valued at if they get to that point where the business does not need them whatsoever? How do you evaluate
And here's the thing, businesses are, typically valued on a multiple on the EBITDA. And ultimately, that's knowing our numbers first and foremost. So if we don't know our numbers well enough, and it's, earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization, taxes and amortization, that's what we have to understand. That what is our earnings in the business today? If I want to sell for, throw out a number, 5 million or 10 million, I can predict pretty clearly about what you need to be doing in that EBITDA number with a multiple on top of that if you were to sell down the road in 5 years, 10 years. Now, in order to create, to me, if you're in a business where you are inundated in the day-to-day today, we need about 3 years to help you get to a sellable level, to get yourself that the proper system and get removed. 3 years is a reasonable time frame. Now, the other goal really is to have 3 years of good financial data, because the buyer is going to be looking at what's the last 3 years in this business, not 1 year, not this one great year you just had. That doesn't mean shit to me long term, because you had some success or the economy took an uptick and things were great. But the fact is, were you sustainable over the last 3 years, handling capacity and growth? And you can see that building over time, and you've created a machine that you can prove to me you have a pipeline, a marketing and sales pipeline. You can prove to me that the systems are in place, the people are in place. I can meet your team as a buyer, and I can see how this thing runs and operates. Man, there's gold. That's absolute gold. Now, what the multiple that you will get is all based on how valuable those systems are, how turnkey they are, and then you have something extremely sellable that you can negotiate with other buyers. It's not just, one guy may want to buy the business at a level that he decides on. It's on what you decide based on.
So you mentioned EBITDA. What is that?
So earnings before depreciation, taxes, and amortization. So it is everything to do with your financials on the bottom line of your financial statement. A good accountant, bookkeeper, well, bookkeeper typically isn't going to get this, but your accountant is going to be able to give you your EBITDA number. Now, if I'm thinking about selling in 3 to 5 years, I'm focused on that EBITDA number and taking that to a level. Now, that's ultimately how they're going to value the business, and they're going to say, okay, what's my multiple in this industry for my EBITDA number? What could I raise that up to? Maybe I can get a four-time multiple. Maybe I can get a 5 if my business is really turnkey. So I'll get a 5x on my EBITDA.
Right.
And now I can say, okay, well, what does my EBITDA number have to be if that were to be true to get me my $5 or $10 million when I sell?
So what would be an example of a number like that you've seen for, I don't know, any construction company? I don't know if you've worked with any specific ones, whether it's even if it's an
Are you
electrician
talking
or
on the
plumber.
multiple or on the?
Well, on the number. So on the multiple. So yeah, if they're getting a certain EBITDA number, and then what's the multiple that they're getting? So I don't know if it's an electrician company.
So here's the thing. It's such the multiple is a massive wide range of numbers. That could be anywhere from, a 1 or 1.5x or 2x to 5x. And it has everything. And this is, I think, what the listener base needs to understand is you can increase that X based on the turnkey of the business. The more it runs without you, the more it's systematized, the more value it has, which is the X factor, right?
Right.
So if you get a 1x factor because really you are the business, and somebody's willing to pay you an EBITDA because, hey, you have created something, it's just not worth a multiple. Maybe you get away with something that's, it's not going to set you up very well, right? And this is what I hate to see is businesses that have just, and this is the hardest working industry on the planet, right? This is a 60+ hour a week industry, normal, right? 60 to 80, and we've worked our ass off all these years. It just saddens me. In fact, this is why, I do what I do today, is because I've just seen far too many guys, including my buddies, that are still doing the same shit they were doing, back when we were in our 20s, and now in our 50s. And it's just, I just hate to see it. So anyone that wants to make a difference and wants that different outcome, that's who I want to work with and help. Right. Ultimately.
Yeah, this has been fantastic, Randy. So I want to give you an opportunity to share. You have some links to share, and we're going to put them all in the show notes. But before that, I want to know, like, what are you most excited about in the future, whether that's in the industry or within your own business? Just what's got you revved up and ready to go?
I would say what I am so jacked up about today is, our business has taken, the last 4 years really to get it dialed in to the point where, we have everything that a builder, remodeler needs to grow and scale their business. We have every tool, SOP, spreadsheet, template that they need, like literally everything that we're handing on a platter today. And I am just jacked up that we have that available for people, that now those that want it, we're able to create and simplify their worlds faster. What we are all about is, we don't need to be, the biggest coaching business on the planet, but we are going to be. And even today, I see the results we're getting, the best for getting results, because I am so friggin' relentless about getting results for those that want it. And our program is dialed in to do that. So I'm excited to see, how our marketing machine works to really help enhance and transform the lives of, 1 million builders. Is, that's the number one goal. But it's about the results. And if it's not about the results, then it's just a cash machine, and that's not what I'm interested in. So that's what I'm excited that we have the tools today to do that.
That's so important. I love the fact that you mentioned results, right? Because that's kind of the way, even, outside of construction, the way my wife and I look at, like, the health. It's like, all right, it doesn't matter what the science is saying per se. It's like, what are the results? Let's go to find somebody who is actually getting results in an area that we want to get results in, and do what they do, right? Or listen to their advice. Don't listen to just because somebody did a study and it came out a certain way. It's like, all right, no. What's actually happening real world right now? Because there's always theory, especially in what we do in building science, but there's like theory of how this is how the house should perform, right? And then there's reality of how the house actually performs, right? So,
and I would hesitate to guess here that, on the building science front, there's a lot more that would like to be more conscious, and the problem is they don't have time to get it figured out. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a time thing. They've been doing it a certain way, and for them to, like, retrain themselves or train their team or train their subs, it's time, not even just for them. It's time, like, down the line, that they have to navigate through.
And seeing that as, hey man, this takes time away from us generating income and revenue and profit, where the truth is, this takes you to another level and separates yourself. This is part of the how. This is a big part of the how. But we need to be able to dial in our time with our people and our systems and get the money right along the way in order to do that. So those big four challenges have to come into play no matter what we're doing, period, and any business, but certainly in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Randy, this has been fantastic. I could keep chatting here, but I know that we both have lots of other things that we need to get to as well. So we'll have to do a round two. For now, though, you have some links here that I'm looking at on my computer. What do you want to share? I think you have a business assessment, as well as some other links that you want to share after that.
Yeah, I mean, number one is just the business assessment is diving into that 10-point diagnostic, and literally in an hour call, I will usually find a handful of holes that I know where we've got some problems, and then give you some form of game plan. So if anyone wants to do a business assessment, please just jump on that, book a call with me and we'll go through that. And depending whether it's myself or one of our team, but ideally I'd love to work with your crew and your guys. So then get on my calendar and we'll dive into the world. Other links is just, likely for our website, or, we've got webinars, endless webinars that are going out, and,
you have the 4-week cash builder boot camp and the 6-week cash builder boot camp as well.
Yeah. So the 4 and the 6 is just depending on, are you at 0 to 1 million or 1 million plus? If you're 1 million to 5 plus, then it's the 6 week, and the 4 week is for 0 to 1. And really it's just about, I know at 0 to 1, we have different problems, different challenges than once we crack the 1 million plus. So we're focused on the core in that 4 week. And really that's about finding, it's all about, both of those are about finding the tens to hundreds of thousands that are falling through the cracks.
That's
Right.
fantastic. So we'll make sure we share the links. Website is the number 4 and then levelcoach.com.
You got it.
And then, well, there, I'm sure you have all sorts of links, but we'll make sure we share your Calendly link to book the business assessment, and as well as those other links and all your social media. So Randy, any parting words of advice before I let you go?
You know what I would suggest is probably number 1 is, if you don't have a current vision, then what are we doing every day? What are we, how do we know what to do today if we don't know where we want to be tomorrow? Right. And so therefore, get focused on what you really want, and don't hold back on how it's going to happen. Don't throw in a whole bunch of, concerns and problems and have excuses why it won't happen. Just decide on what you want and start the vital actions in getting there, and taking a bite at a time, because this thing does not happen in one bite.
Absolutely. That's great advice, Randy. I can actually speak for myself and realize that it's not like, the more we focus on the how, the more we get bogged down, right? You just set the intention, you set the vision, and then you just start focusing on whatever opportunities land in front of you, and stay focused on that. Go back, to the intention. That's what I find works for me anyways.
That's
the
it.
intention / vision, back to focusing. And you can't just stay in one spot or the other. You kind of need to bounce back and forth, but ultimately work on what's been put in front of you that day.
Right. Yep. I mean, again, if we get into something else, we'll be here another hour, but I love what you're talking about there, because that's how our whole program works.
Yeah.
That's like the core of it.
Amazing. Well, Randy, thank you so much for doing what you do. Thank you so much for being on the show. Once again, all the links will be in our show notes down below. And until next time.
Fabulous. Thanks for having me.
If you live in the US and you're looking to save money on your monthly electricity bills, head to theconsciousbuilder.com/solar. There's never been a better time to go solar, because of the fact that there are fantastic incentives in the US, and because of the fact that solar has come down in price by over 50% in the last 10 years. Just go to theconsciousbuilder.com/solar to see if your home qualifies. And don't worry if you're concerned about the upfront cost, because there are fantastic financing opportunities that will still allow you to save money and not pay any money up front. Once again, that's theconsciousbuilder.com/solar. Until next time, I'm Casey Gray, and remember to live consciously.